Good morning again. This is yet another session on ZeroS, more specifically on working with the primitives, with the ZeroS primitives, but this time by using the node robot. In the past sessions, we have been working already for some time with the primitives. We have been explaining the primitives. We have been introduced to the primitives, but we have been using them through the SAL that is provided in JumpScale. Today we'll be working with the same primitives, actually showing you how to get things done as we did before, but this time by interacting with the node robot. So that's actually the content of this session. I remind you that we have a full training schedule, that we already have been doing lots of sessions in the past. This is actually the second series on ZeroS. On this slide, you see, first of all, the link to all the sessions. And secondly, so let me open it so that you see it, where you'll see an overview of all the sessions we already did. And then the next session is it being scheduled, the session of today. As you can see, we still have also a list of sessions that we plan to do in the future. We didn't schedule them yet, but also we'll be adding more sessions as we think it's necessary. For instance, the session of today, most probably I'll do a delivery next week with more examples, with better slides, and most probably based on feedback and based on things that we discover today. We'll make the session better. So this is the first delivery of a session that we will do also most probably next week. Furthermore, what I always do, I always script every single thing that I show, not just for myself, but certainly also for myself, but most importantly for you, so that you can do whatever I do on your environment. And I make these scripts as basic as possible, explaining really every single step, even steps that for some of you probably are really, really obvious. But I make these scripts as verbose as I can, so that everybody without not too much experience can do it. So that's really the purpose of the way I do the scripts. For instance, the script of today is this one. It's still being updated because I'm not really ready with it. It always includes also a picture of what we are trying to achieve. And then you see the demo steps of everything that we will be doing, including even things like installing the ZeroRobot client, getting the ZeroRobot client, really all kind of steps that you typically need to go through, some of them only once. And that's typically the reason why some of us forget to talk about it, because they did it in the past, but they forgot that they had to do some things in order to have it. But once you have them, it's there and it's nice to have it. And examples of that are, for instance, configuration instances, zero-tier, configuring configuration instances for your ZeroRobot. That's typically something you do only once for a specific node, for a specific robot, or for a specific zero-tier account or OpenV Cloud account. So even the configuration, as if you never did it before, is always in the demo scripts, which makes the demo scripts typically longer than what I do in the demos themselves, okay? But I think that's certainly very useful. That's also not easy for me, because as we are still changing the APIs, we are still updating stuff and we're still developing. Sometimes things change also, and I need to check back the scripts and update them too. So this picture shows basically what we did in the past, the left side, and what we will be doing today. And it's important that you understand that very well. Some of you that attended all my sessions until now, they certainly remember my talk about this. The left side until now was about interacting with the Zero Core directly through the Redis interface, which is only possible if you start a ZeroS node in development mode. Talking through the Redis interface means that you can use the ZeroS client, the ZeroS client that is provided by JumpScale. In the last session I showed you, basically I introduced you quite elaborately in using the SAL of ZeroS that you can use through a JumpScale client for ZeroS to to create a gateway, to create a virtual machine, to create a 0DB, to create virtual disks, and to create everything you typically need when we talk about the Zero OS primitives. Today, we will actually do, or start to do, it's the first iteration of this session, the same, but this time by using the Zero Robot, by using the Zero templates. I'll talk about that in a minute. And as you will see, yes, the Zero Robot, or the Node Robot as we call it, as part of a Zero OS Node, exposes its functionality to a RESTful API. So this time you're not talking to a Redis interface, but it doesn't matter too much because from a JumpScale perspective, there is just another JumpScale client to interact very conveniently with the Node Robot. And as you will see, you'll be able to do exactly the same stuff as we did before, but through probably a much more easier interface where you don't have to care too much about underlying details. Also, it's not just about provisioning, and that's always a very important point to realize. It's not just about provisioning a gateway or provisioning a virtual machine or provisioning a virtual disk. It's also about the Node Robot is also doing the full lifecycle management. The nice thing about using the Node Robot is that you typically spin off what we call services. A service, for instance, for monitoring and for deploying a certain gateway or for deploying a certain VM. But again, it's not just about this deploying of this virtual machine or this deploying of the gateway. It's also about monitoring the gateway and doing whatever is necessary in the course of the life cycle of that gateway. Today, we will not cover these aspects, but always remember that the magic of a Node Robot also comes with this templating that we will talk about, and that this template typically includes lots of code, lots of intelligence basically to manage the full life cycle, so not just the deployment itself. So that's very important, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Here again, I show you what we did the previous time. It was, well, quite sophisticated and probably quite difficult for some of you to follow. Because we were running Zero OS in a virtual machine on OpenV Cloud, which forced me to introduce you and to talk about many other stuff that is rather related to OpenV Cloud, to the specifics of OpenV Cloud, to the way you get what we call a cloud space and a virtual machine and things like external network addresses. This made the session probably more complicated than was really necessary to introduce you to the cell. But on the other hand, I think it was quite interesting because it allowed me to introduce you to one of the three typical network configurations you set up with the gateway. And that one was in the other session about using a VLAN and setting up a VLAN. Well, it was not about setting up a VLAN, but it was about running a virtual machine, in this case, a virtual machine with Zero OS, that is connected to the internet through a VLAN provided by OpenV Cloud. We are not going to do that session again. On the other hand, the demo scripts and the slides about the session that I did the previous time got updated a lot. So I added a lot of extra information, even a lot of new extra things in the demo script to make it even more interesting. I even added some things about how to also run the same machine on Packet.net, for instance. Talking about Packet.net, today, for today's demo, I have chosen again for Packet.net, not for any very specific reason, but I think it's very useful again to show you that we have for both for OpenV Cloud and Packet.net a nice JumpScale client that allows you to do all the things without even ever having to leave JumpScale. The setup maybe might look again still quite complex, but don't be afraid. It's all quite straightforward what we will do. It's basically about setting up a gateway that you see here, setting up a gateway that is attached to a public IP address, that is provided to us by Packet.net. And as you can see, if you spin off a machine, not a virtual machine, but a physical machine, at Packet.net, you always get only one physical IP address. And that is, of course, the big difference with the scenario of the other time, of last week, where we have spin off a virtual machine in OpenV Cloud, which forced us also to attach a second public IP address to the virtual machine that we then use to attach into the gateway. This time it's rather more simple, as I will explain in a minute. We just have one IP address, and that one IP address is both used by the ZeroS node itself, and we will be using the same the same interface, the same network interface, ET0, as you can see here, as the gateway, into the gateway, let's say, the public part of the public leg of the gateway, which we will then connect to a zero-tier network. And that was basically the second use case we talked about in the previous session. So in the previous session, we had two use cases. The first one was about using a VXLAN as a private network, which required OpenV storage, OpenV switch. This time, I made the choice to more talk about the second use case that we only covered by talking about in the previous session, but it's also in the demo script. So if you still want to set it up in an OpenV Cloud environment, it's nicely scripted. And this time I will demo that exact use case. So I will show you how to set up a zero-tier private network as part of the gateway. So you end up then with an environment where you can attach a VM that is running on the physical ZeroS node on Packet.net, that is attached to this zero-tier network, and that is also accessible through the gateway that is attached to the public IP address that Packet.net provides us. And the other difference, of course, as depicted in the previous slide already, is that we interact this time mainly through the Jumpscale client for Zero Robot, but I'll also be using the Zero client, OS client, as we did in previous sessions, just because I can, and it's always nice to use it if you have it. But basically, for the topic of the session, you probably will never need it, and in production, it's the only option. You always need to go to the Zero client for Robot. Okay? My slides are not at all complete, and to be very honest, the only slide, the next slide that I should show is this one. Because this is a slide I also added to the previous slide deck, but never showed you before. And it's a quite important one. I plan to create some pictures about this slide to make it more visual. But this is rather important to understand. Because when I was setting up a gateway, remember a gateway, that's this picture I showed you the last time. A gateway typically has two legs. And I typically had a public leg and a private leg. And today I will have a public leg that is directly connected through the internet, the public IP address provided by Packet.net. And I have a private leg that is just connected to a private zero-tier network. Now, in the previous session, remember that this public leg was attached to a VLAN, because that's the way you work in an OpenV Cloud environment, which forced me to do a lot of extra stuff to make it work, but all was nicely documented and explained. This time, I won't need to do so, and going back to the slide, I won't need to do this second use case, because that is what we did in the previous session, and I will make better slides about that to make it clear. This time we will use the default network. And the default network is the use case that you will typically use in an environment where your ZeroS node only has one IP address, one public IP address, which is the case with the ZeroS node when you run it, when you start it in Packet.net. So in Packet.net, you always only get one public IP address, and the same public IP address is both used by the ZeroS, itself, and you need to, well, if you need to use it, what you need to do is when using the gateway, and this is an example of how to do it through the SAL. Remember that you set up a gateway, and you can add a leg to the network or to the gateway like this, and there you specify for type just default. You give it whatever name you want, but you specify default. In the previous session, and just check my slides in the script, we used the third use case, And the difference there is that there, instead of default, you specify VLAN. That's the only difference. And of course, the VLAN tag that needs to be used. So in a way, when using Packet.net, it's simpler. You just say that you have a public LAC into your gateway that is directly attached to the public IP address provided by Packet.net. Another use case not covered today, but it might, and it's most probably very interesting for you too, is when you have a second interface. So when your node has two interfaces, in a way, just as in the case of the last use case, but in this case, when you have a second internet or network interface that is also directly, not through VLAN, but directly connected to the internet, also then we can support you by creating a bridge. I'm not covering this today. I just added here how you do that. You typically, at the level of the nodes itself, so if you go to the client interface of the ZeroS node, you can create a bridge. You can give it any name you want. Then you execute it. To be honest, I just copied this from a friend of mine. I didn't try it myself, but this is the way you do it. And at the end, you create then the gateway, and in the gateway you attach this this public or this bridge as you created it to this bash command. Basically, it's not a bash command. It's a Christophe, I remember. Kenakos is a bash command.
Yes, that's basically just IP. But like in the next version of ZeroS, we fixed that, and there is now a primitive to do that. So it's not going to won't have to do to know the command. You will just do like add IP to bridge or something.
Okay.
So that version is going to be abstracted, basically.
Ah, cool. That makes sense, of course, because that's the whole idea, that we hide as much of the details and keep it.
Basically, you should never use like the system call, because it's like low level. And but yeah, when we encounter new stuff that we need to do, then we create a primitive.
Okay. Cool. Good to know. Okay. Perfect. So we'll certainly come back on that. And in a way, even if you don't understand everything today, it's not that a problem, because we'll use the most simple approach today, which is basically using the IP address provided by Packet.net. Okay. In the script, I didn't put the steps already in the slides, but typically you create a zero-tier network. I'm not going to do this again because I showed you how to do that the other time. The nice thing is about creating a zero-tier network is, as everything you do with JumpScale, you can do it through JumpScale. And here you see it. I'm not going to show it again. You typically give some name to the account. So, but this does, by the way, and let me do it here just so that you see. So if I go here, I do J clients and I do zero-tier. It's I think good that I show you list. What you actually see here in this list is, and it's a bit strange because this is an error. I need to delete this, and I will do it in a minute just so that you also see how to do that. But what you see here, these are my zero-tier configuration instances. And what do they represent? They represent my personal account on zero-tier. So you typically set it up only once. So let me just delete the second one because it should not be there. I'm not sure why I did make that mistake. So the way you delete it is quite simple. You do zero-tier clients, zero-tier, and you do just delete like this, zero-tier, delete, and then you specify the name that you see, just the my account or packet account, and that's what you do. Okay, like this, and then you end up with only one. So what I did is, here you see it, I typically, well, that's how I love to do it. I get a client to it, and then you get indeed, and just let me show it. It's important that you realize how that works. If you go to then the client, so I did that already up front. You can then check the configuration like this. And here you see the only thing that is in this configuration instance is an encrypted key. What key is it? Is it the token? That's typically the token you get when you go to zero tier. So if you go to the My Zero tier, like this, you go to your account, and typically at the level of account here, you can create access tokens. And this value, this is the actual value that you pass, as you see it here in my script. If you really want to create the first time that you create, you pass it into a configuration. And then here you see how you then create this configuration. And then the configuration manager will encrypt this value with the SSH key you specified when setting up the JumpScale configuration manager. So that's, I'm not going to do that again. And what you then typically do in the demo is you create your admin network. And let me show, that's what I did here. I did create this network. And also there I have to introduce something that I didn't explain the other time, so that's nice. So you can create this admin network. Why do I call this the admin network? Well, simply because the only reason why I will be using this zero-tier network is for interacting as an administrator of that ZeroS node with the ZeroS node, both through the JumpScale client for ZeroS, as we did before, and interacting with the RESTful API of the robot. So, and that's the only way you will be able to interact with both the robot and the Zero Core. That is through the zero-tier network. And remember, I will show that when you boot a machine on Packet.net or on OpenView Cloud, you typically have to provide the zero-tier network. You are free not to do it, but you typically do so. You provide the zero-tier admin network through which you will allow interaction. And any other interaction will fail. So that's what you do. Now, what I did do the other time, at some point in time, because I thought when creating the zero-tier network, so here you see it. So I give it a name. I give it a name, and then you can create it, and that's what I do here. And what I didn't show you the other time is that I didn't specify this extra parameter that I'm using. I'm supposed to use here the subnet. Where is it? The auto-assign range. Okay. See. So this parameter. So if you check my previous session, you remember I created the network through the client for zero-tier, but I didn't specify subnet equals auto-assign range. And this auto-assign range, this is actually one of these that you select. And in my previous session, because I didn't know how to do it myself yet, I created the network, but I still had to select the range from which it should auto-assign manually. So that's certainly, it's an easy one, but that's certainly something that you can do with this just extra argument to create. Okay? And as a result, you end up then with the network. And yeah, if you do the list of the networks, here you see it, you get the list. And you see I already set up multiple networks to get all my networks. Okay, so nothing sophisticated here, but I wanted to still explain that because I didn't do that the other time. Then you join the network, and you join the network from the machine from which you will do all the work. Also, that was nicely explained the other time. You use a prefab module for that. You use, just as what you did for installing the zero-tier bits on your machine, you use the prefab module for zero-tier. Basically, to join the network from your admin machine. And that was, again, a two-step process. You do a join, which still requires somebody to authorize the join, and that's what I do in the second step. I'm not going to do it again. The new stuff is when talking to Packet.net. Also, when talking to Packet.net, just as in the case of zero-tier, there are two aspects. You need an account on Packet.net, and then you need a network. So in order for an account, you need a configuration instance in the configuration manager that represents your account on Packet.net, just as what I had with zero-tier. And then you create a network. In this case, it's not a network. You create a machine, or what I call a device. And that's, again, another configuration instance that will be created for that. Now, let's just do that. Let's Well, in my case, again, I'm not going to do this again, but what you see here, I already have my Packet account. So let's use that one. So let's just use that value and get indeed the client. That's what I do here. Nothing difficult. I'm not going to create a new one. Creating a new one is nicely documented here. Let me just explain you how it works. Typically, what you need to provide here is another API key. And also at Zero-Tier, at Packet.net, you have API keys. And why would you need an API key? Well, clearly, in order for the client to interact with this environment. Otherwise, it won't work. So that's the API key need to pass when setting up the configuration instance for your Packet account. And then you also specify the project. So if you go to Packets, that's very simple again. I log in. And over there you will see my servers. And slow, not sure why, but it will come through probably. So. Okay. Very slow. Not sure why. We still, well, will come through. Very strange. Why is that? Okay. See? So what you see here for my account, I have 2 projects. Well, we go to, how did I end up here? By the way, here's the API key. So if you need to set up an API key, you click there. There you go to the API keys. And here you see my 2 organizations in which I have access. In my case, I use this Incubate organization, where you see I have a machine running, let it run. So I can always use it in the demo later. And that's what you specify here. You provide the name of the project. You create a configuration for it. So basically having just the API key and the project name, and then you create the configuration. So it's all straightforward, nothing special. Now, the nice thing is, of course, when you want to create the Packet, the Packet machine, the device. And remember, the way you do it, you provide manually, you know the trick. You typically create a new server by providing some parameters, a name, a location, a size, and then most importantly, you specify that you want to boot with EPXC, and then you provide this EPXC URL. So that's actually what we will send over to the interface, to the API. So let's just do that. Remember that the first thing you typically do, and let me copy this, the first thing you typically do is specifying parameters such as the its.you.online organization. And remember that the REST API and also the API that you get to the Jumpscale client for ZeroS is protected to its.you.online, meaning that you always need to send a JSON web token that proves that you are a member of a specific its.you.online organization. And that's one of the kernel parameters that you need to provide when booting a ZeroS node, that it only will accept requests from users that have membership in that organization. So I'm always using this organization, and then this is the development kernel parameter that specifies that I'm going to use it in development mode, so allowing me to use the Redis interface, for instance. And I'm also adding another one that I didn't use in the previous session that allows me, and let me make the screen bigger, so that allows me to specify, that allows me to attach to the console, which I will do. So allows me to see really the output of the console when it's working. And then the branch Normally, remember, you should not use development branch. Well, you could and you should if you like, but it's always risky. Today, I need to, because I need to use bug fixes that are only available in the development branch that are important for my demo. It's related to creating a gateway through the ZeroS node robot. And there was a bug there that is already fixed, but not yet available in the version 1.2.2. So that's the reason why I'm using that. Good. So all very simple. And these parameters, what I do with, I give, well, let's create a node. Let's give it a name. So my ZOS node 2. So that's the name that I will be creating. I need to, well, that's tricky, of course. I need to specify the 0 token. Well, it's already in a variable, so I don't need to overwrite it. And then what you do here, and let me just copy that instead of writing all this, and let me explain what is happening. So you need to use on the packet client this thing that is called the start ZeroS. You provide the host name, you provide the plan, so the size of the machine, you provide the facility, so it's Amsterdam, you provide the zero-tier admin network ID. So this is, remember, I didn't create, so this is basically the address of my, here, of this one. So this value is already in the parameter. And I need to specify the zero-tier API token, yeah? Why? Because this allows then the JumpScale can then interact with zero-tier, and that's important because that's one of the steps we did manually in the past. Authorize the join request. And remember, in the previous session, when we boot a machine, a virtual machine with ZeroS, automatically it sent a join request into the admin network, the zero-tier admin network, and then I still had to manually authorize the join request. By using the Packet.NET client, yeah, you will see that the Packet.NET client includes the logic to also do the join request authorization. Of course, this cannot work if you do not provide or forward the token to it. And that's the reason why. Furthermore, I send over the kernel parameters, that's the ones I specified, and the branch, which is in my case development. So it's quite straightforward. And as you can see, this call returns 3 parameters or 3 return values. It immediately returns me the ZeroS client, so that's also something we didn't have in the previous session. Remember, in the previous session when booting a VM on OpenV Cloud, providing the EPXE, we still had to create the configuration instance for the ZeroS manually. Also, this is one of the things that is done for you by this method. By this client, by this Packet.NET client. It also immediately creates a client for you, so a configuration instance for that ZeroS node, and it returns it as a return value. Furthermore, the IP address is nicely returned, and the node interface. Well, this node interface is rather the device, I think. That's something I need to... No, that's interesting. The node you get back here, by the way, is, if you remember my JumpScale sessions, we introduced you to the node manager. Well, this is actually what you get back. You get back a node, as we call it in the node manager, allowing you to interact with it by just getting the node from the node manager in the future. So this is certainly one of the nicer things to use. To be honest, I never tried that for a ZeroS node, so I'm not really sure whether it works. Maybe Christophe could tell, but I don't know. It's certainly useful.
I've never played with it.
Yeah. But I think the vision is in line with JumpScale. The node manager is one of the, and don't bother about the arrows, I will explain what is happening. The node manager is one of the interesting parts of JumpScale that makes it transparent to you whether it is a node on is a node on OpenV Cloud, a node on Packet.NET, whether it's a node on Azure, it shouldn't matter. We provide through the node manager like one single thing that allows you to connect to that node and not having to bother about all the connectivity details and so on. And that's the whole point of the node manager. And yes, of course, for a 0S node, we should support that. But that's certainly one of the things I didn't test. What is happening here? So, so if you check Packet.net, you'll see that the server is being booted. It's actually already booted, and as you can see here, it's already there. It's online, and also see this one here. It got an ID. We need that ID for something I will show you in a minute. So the node is there. It is running, and it should already be at least, or that's actually what it is doing. And that's always a tricky moment where I always feel a little bit nervous. And that's actually what you see here. This node is starting and is trying to join the zero-tier network. Now, to be very honest with you, I had problems with that yesterday, and I know how to solve that. And I decided, like, okay, let's do that again while you're watching how to do that. It's Christophe, I'm happy that you see here, because this is actually the problem I had yesterday for which I contacted you. And I'll show how I solved it yesterday. So, because this is certainly one of the things you can run into yourself too. And let me explain what is happening. First of all, before I do that, if you go back to the zero-tier network, I'm reusing the same zero-tier network, admin network, as I did yesterday. So this is the machine from which I'm running. And this is the node I started yesterday. So I'm not going to touch it. That's the old node that is still there. Now, the other node doesn't pop up. That's not good. So we need to find out what is happening here. Now, let me show you in the script what I have there on that topic. If you go in that topic, oops, yeah, you'll see that that I have something that you will find interesting. Namely here, if you put it, and you can, and I'm not going to interrupt this. This is an important thing. I'm not going to interrupt it, but this is certainly something you can do when it is booted. You can get this device ID also through the Packet.net client that we have in Drumscale. So this value of the machine that just got started here, this value here, this value, the ID, and that's also the ID you see here. This value, you can fetch it through the API that we provide in the Drumscale client. And why would you need to do that? Don't try to do this. This doesn't work, but that doesn't matter too much. But it allows me to do the following. Let me go back to my screen here to show you what I want to do. So I'm going to create, let me maybe first close these screens here next. So let's make this screen a little bit nicer. And let's close this. Control B X. Right, Control B X, and I'll close this one. Yeah, and also close this other one. Sorry, I'm just cleaning up my screens. Okay, yes, and let's now create a new one. No. So Control B, what is it again? To split the screen like this? No.
It's Control B %.
Control B %. Wait, Control B %. Okay, sorry for making you wait. So what I will do, let me do that. Yes, device ID. Let me put it in a variable. So I copy it in the variable. Voila. And then let me just copy the statement here. This is very useful if running on Packet.net. You simply then SSH into the console output of the machine. And there you see what is actually happening on that machine. But that's one thing. And clearly, I don't know, at this point, it still looks okay to me. but clearly things go wrong. And let me show you how I fixed that yesterday. So what I did yesterday, I go to Packet.net. First of all, on this node, I enable the set to always PXE boot. Why do you do that? This is not something I would love to see in the JumpScale client. It's not available yet, but this allows me to say to Packet.net that whenever you reboot or whenever this machine boots, it should check again for the PXE URL and boot from there. Otherwise, it will boot from whatever it booted before, and whatever I change, it will not get affected. So I'm enabling that. That's the first thing I do. The other thing I do, here you see the EPXE URL that got passed. I edit that like this, and I change it. What do I change here? I remove the HTTPS, I make it HTTP, and I put it to unsecure.bootstrap. So what this does is, it actually, and let me show you if I copy this string, copy, it's always good to test it. It actually gets the PXE URL through HTTP, not HTTPS. And I'm not sure how to explain that, Christophe or whomever that can explain it in the session, but we see sometimes issues when trying to fetch the EPXE through HTTPS.
Yeah, that's nothing to do with us. It's just that sometimes Packet.net, for some reason, their IPXE doesn't allow it HTTPS.
Yeah,
it's something from their platform.
Yeah, so that's certainly something that. And here you see, by the way, this exact parameters. That is the admin network, the zero-tier network, and this is the correct parameter. So there's nothing wrong. So fine. So I updated that. I say save. Okay. And when I now reboot this machine, it should get a new EPXE from there. Correct? That's what I did yesterday. Yeah? So it's rebooting, and probably here it should disconnect. So this is typically where I end up. It has problems booting, and now of course it will disconnect because it is disconnected. Just wait for a moment while this is happening. Okay. Okay. And what I do again, I try to reconnect. I try to reconnect to the same device ID. Yeah. And let's see what is happening now. So the machine is again booting. Yeah. We don't have this option for OpenV Cloud. Not that I know. I find this, especially when you want to play with stuff and want to learn and go deeper into details, it's quite interesting to see the console output on Packet.net. Well, let's hope that this works. If not, yeah, that's live. Then I'm at least happy that Christophe is watching. And then he will tell me that, again, I did something very stupid. But that's what it is then. Christophe, I'm sure you're doing other times in the meantime. I'm not sure. I don't think that you saw a mistake. So there you see it. It's downloading. It's working. It's downloading the image. So, and that's actually the issue we had, I think, because it didn't have the image. So see, now things happen. I don't know what, but things happen that look better than before. And in the left side of my screen, you still see the JumpScale client waiting for the machine to come up. And actually, it is waiting to, what it's actually doing now, it's constantly pinging this zero-tier network and checking for a new member. And whenever the new member is there, it will authorize it. See? I see in the session Chris is there, Christophe is there, and there is somebody else, but I don't know who that is. Who else is in the session? Can you reveal yourself? You have this funny name that you let me show you. This is your name. I don't know who you are, but I'm quite interested to know who you are. Or if you choose to stay hidden, it's you're right, of course. Today, voilà, see, it worked. It's a GDPR day today. Eh? We should not ask these questions. Eh? People should be allowed to not reveal who they are. Eh? So what happened if you go back to zero tier and have a look? This new node is there. It got an IP address assigned, and remember this is a zero tier IP address, and it also got assigned. Here you see the physical IP address. This is the physical IP address assigned by packet, and this is the one from zero tier. So this is my dev node. Let's call it dev node of this. So I'm just tagging it. Okay, that's the one we will be working with. So that's quite nice to see where we are. Okay. If you go back to my demo script, then we will, and I'm happy that you are there again, Christophe, because I have another bug that I found. Let me show you. If you check the zero tier client that got returned, like this, the zero tier client, and check the config data, see, the JWT is not saved. See?
So because 0s client, what is this? Is a client on what?
This is the client. This is the client that you got back from this call here. Here, when booting the machine. Ah. See this client, and it exists. So what I do to fix that? I basically get the JWT manually through the client for Institute Online. So let's do that. So this is my JWT. Oops, JWT. And then I pass this value to the client so that it's getting written. So I set the data of the client, and then I have the. And this is required because if you don't do that, you'll get an error when trying to interact with the client with this OS. It will say you're not authorized because it doesn't have the client, the JWT. I filed this as a bug last week, so that's interesting. And here you see this will not work. So if you then get to the SOL interface, if you get to the SOL of that node, that will still work. But if you would then list all the containers, you'll get an error saying that you're not authorized to do that. See, and here you see there's only one container, and that's actually what the session is about. We are going to interact now with the Zero robot, which is running in a container, but we will be doing it through the REST API. Yeah? And for that, as you see in the demo script, this we can skip. We can always authorize the SSH key if you really want to SSH into this environment. Sometimes this is useful, again, for debug purposes, but for now I don't need that. Huh? Here I also explain, I'm not going to do that, that you need to install the Zero Robot client. Now, if you would be using the JumpScale sandbox, it comes with the Zero Robot client, I think. Is that true, Christophe?
Yes. Yeah.
Sandbox. Well, anyway, if you don't have it, which is the case if you install JumpScale today, the full installation as I documented it and explained in the session, you still need to install the Zero Robot client. Now, installing the Zero client requires you basically to install the Zero Robot. This is done by following these steps. I'm not going to do it. And as a result then, you will see, you can then check the Zero Robot configuration instances. Now, this is something that you will need to do, of course, because in my case, I already have one, but this one clearly is still the one talking to the other machine that I set up yesterday. So what I will do today now is create a new Zero Robot configuration instance for interacting with the robot running on the other side, the new one. How do you do that? Let's give it a name. Let's give it the Zero Robot dev name, and that's the name we will give it. And then you need to pass again this JWT. remember, and the zero-tier IP address. And the zero-tier IP address is one of the return values that you got when booting the packet.net device. So these two values are nicely available for you. And what you do is you put them in a dictionary. Let me check. Yeah, you put them. Yeah, why I'm doing this differently here. No, this is not correct. So don't do it like this. This is an error in my script here. Don't do this. The URL you need to specify here should be the IP address on the zero-tier network, and you need to specify the port number. And remember, in the picture, the robot is listing on 6600. So that's what you need to do. Only thing is, zero address. Let me check this. This should give the same value. See? So you can also get the value there. So you put it in a variable, because that is the URL of the machine, of the robot, and that's basically the configuration that I will then pass to create the new Zero Robot client and configuration instance. So if you would now list the configuration instances, you'll see a new one. Also my new one, the robot dev, and that's the one I will be using. Now I'll be doing something other thing that is quite cool, I think, and useful. I'll stream the Zero Robot output also in a separate window. So let me do that. So what I will do, I go again to the right side. I'm going to split the screen like this, right? And what I'm going to do on here is also start a jump scale interactive shell. And yeah, I'm basically going to do what you see here. I'm going to list all 0S. That's the same thing. You get the same data as before. You see, and that's interesting. I didn't explain that yet, but what you see here is that automatically, when creating the packet.net client, it did create this client and a configuration instance, and it named it with the zero-tier IP address. So in this case, let's not make a mistake. So it did create a configuration instance for the zero-base node, and it named it based on the IP address. Okay, that's good. So what I do here is I copy that value, not that value, but 69, just in a variable. And then I'm going to get also here the cell interface, just as what I did before. So now I'm at the same point as next door. And then I get the container. So I go to ZOS cell and I get that container with the name, the ZRobot. Okay. And then I can do something very cool. I can get a subscription to the output, the standard output, I think, of that container. And what I do next, I stream that output in this window. See? Now, let me show you what it means. Go back here. If I now do things like ZRobot, yeah, and I do like templates, yeah, and I say, list me all the templates, well, the list, which is UIDs, and you do this, you see, you get all the templates. Well, that's something I saw the other time too. It's like he's using another robot. See? So that's another problem I always have. I need to understand why this is happening. And I always fix it by checking the configuration of that client. Let me do it. If you go here, config, it is 69. Yeah, so this is correct. But why is it? It's, I think, still talking to the other robot. And ZRobot. CFG, yeah, CFG is correct. 69, ZRobot. But how can I? Shit. That's really annoying. let me do it like this. And then JOS instance name. I always have to do that. That's the correct one. Ah, no, see, that's the reason. Let me update this value. Also here, equals to the correct IP address. And let's update. I need to figure out why I always have this error. So what I'm actually going to do now, I'm going to update the configuration instance. Or I'm going to get the sal for the other one, like this. So this is correct. And here the robot, that's what I need to do, exactly. Z robot, okay. And if I do now Z robot, and I do the same thing with the templates. Okay, now it works, see? Now, okay, don't bother, not sure what I did wrong, but the point is, if you use the Z robot, that's what I want to show, you basically have at the higher level only two things you can do. You can talk to the service, or you can do something with the service or something with the templates. I'm not going to re-explain what we already explained in the session of Christophe in my session, but the idea of a template is that of like the other Christophe always says, a zero robot is like a baby, and you need to teach the baby. And you teach the baby by feeding it templates. And the templates have all kind of intelligence of how to manage the full life cycle of whatever you want to manage through the zero robot. So what you will see, and that's what we will introduce you today, if you go to the ZeroS repositories, there is one that is ZeroS templates. Yeah. What you will see there is that we have a bunch of templates, and this is what the session is basically all about. The session is about all these templates, and you'll see templates. For instance, one of them that we'll be using is the node template. And what is a node template? Here you see the documentation of the node template. The node template contains all the intelligence that you need to pass to a zero robot, or a node robot in this case, so that that zero robot knows how to manage the full life cycle of a node. Yeah? And that's what the node template is about, and we will be using it. So what we will actually be doing, we'll say to the robot, okay, here's the template, and create now a service based on that template. And it's that service then that then will do the full life cycle management of that node. The same thing you will see here, that I have one for VM, I have one for 0DB, and I have one for gateway. So I have one for each of the primitives, and each of those I will be using. I also have one for network, for managing the network of the node through a service that doing the full lifecycle. Or we have one, and that's the one I might want to use first. No, I will do it later. Is the one for zero tier. Where is it? There is one for zero tier too. It's me, but I don't see it. There is one for zero tier, you'll be seeing. Probably it's not here, but in the documentation it will get revealed here. There is one for zero tier. Zero tier client, of course, yeah. So why would you need that one? Why would you need that one? This one, for instance, you will typically also spin off a service that represents basically your zero tier account, or a zero tier account. Why? So that the robot also knows how to manage basically that zero tier network. And the gateway that we are going to create will be created by a gateway service. And that gateway service needs to authorize service or join requests. And for doing that, he will be interacting for that with this service. So services can work together to get things done. So that's why we will be using it in the demo. Okay, let's do that. Huh? Let's see in the script what I prepared. So this is interesting. I had to do that yesterday. It's just to show the current version of the robot, because I had to do that yesterday just to be sure that I'm using the correct version. Anyway, what I will do first is set some variables, and these variables are basically the URLs, the UIDs of the templates that I will be using to set up actually the same thing as we set up the other time. Yeah. The first thing I do, and for the demo it's not really necessary, I prepare some configuration data, and the only thing that I pass is the name, the host name of the node. And let me show you what I'm talking about. In the templates, there is this node template, and as you can see in the documentation, it takes an argument, a host name. As you can see, there is all kinds of actions you can then use. You can reboot a node through the service. You can get info about the node through the service. But most importantly, probably for the demo, is it's also this service that is then also responsible for creating the 0DB namespaces and stuff like that. Huh? So I'm not fully up to date yet on that part, but as far as I understand, we'll need the node service, I think, when we are going to work with a gateway service, because the gateway service will then use the node service to know what the namespaces are of the 0DB. This is an example of something that I will talk more about when I understand it myself better in the next session.
Yeah, basically, just a word of the create ZDB namespace action. That's basically, well, it's mostly an internal command, because when you create, for example, a vdisk template, it basically will call this action on the node service, because the node service is the one who knows about the disk of the node. So basically you have the logic of the capacity planning regarding disks and ZDB namespace in the node service. So that's why we have that action.
Cool. So this is in a way yet another example of how Zero Robot services work together to get things done. And it's important to know that the gateway service that we will spin off in this demo needs the node service to be there to do its work, I think. Or the same thing for the virtual disk service that we will spin off needs to have the node service, because it will then talk to it to get that information through this action, I guess, right? Okay. So, in my script, what I did, actually, I spin off the node service like this. I'm going to copy it and explain it what it does. Well, let me vote. And what you see here, and let me make the screen bigger. What you see here, that I first, I use the Zero Robot. I say services, find create, and basically I pass the node UID. That's this value. I specify whatever name I want to give the service. And remember, this is not about the actual node. That is just about the thing representing the node, the thing that will take care of the node, the thing that you will interact with through the Zero Robot REST API to get things done on the node. So you will not use the RESTAL anymore. You'll talk to that service through the REST API. And you specify the node data. That's the only two things I passed here. And then I use the service to schedule an action, in this case, install. And whatever, by the way, if you are interested, if you go to the code here, you can go to the node.py, and there you'll see the implementation of all actions. And one of them, of course, is the one I just called, is the install one. Which for some reason is at the bottom, as it looks like. See, here you have somewhere the install. I didn't see it. It's probably me, but install is there. It is. Here you see that is what is actually happening. And why do I show this? Just to remind you that this kind of stuff is the kind of stuff that you would have been doing, as we showed you in the previous session, by using the sol. So here you'll see a lot of these sol calls that we used or introduced to you the last time. Instead of doing it yourself in the future, you will have a robot doing it for you based on the template intelligence. Let's go it like that. Huh? Good. So let me make the screen again like this so that we see that if I do this in the right side, you'll see that the robot will actually take up work. So you see two things happening in the right side down side. You see the robot output, and in the top side you see basically what is being shown on the console while that is happening. So it's done. So as a result, if you do zero robot like this, and you do services, and you do names, for instance, you'll get basically that the service is there. So what you could do now is you say n equals z robot services, yeah, and then it's, I think, get, and you can check what it takes as parameters, and you specify the name equals, in this case, well, just the name. Let me just copy the value here, like this, and you'll get basically the node service. So this is then you can see all the actions that the node service exposes, and then you'll get this list, see, of things, including the install one, that this service exposes. So this is what you can get done. I'm not going to show you, but remember in the last session I also showed you can interact with the node robot through Insomnia, for instance. And for demo purposes, I would typically use that. If I would have to demo it to non-developers, I would typically use Insomnia and show them that you interact through a REST API with the node service to get things done. Especially once you start creating blueprints, which is like a next level, making it even more transparent and easy to do. Okay? So this is the first thing we do. So it's all quite straightforward. I'm not going to do this because I don't need it, but you can also then create a network service. And why would you want to do that? Well, in the case that you would be working with the VLAN public network, or as I did in the previous session also, create a private VXLAN, both would require an Open vSwitch container on the machine, on the node. You get to that by doing the SAL calls I showed you the last time, or you get there by just creating a network service and configuring it, in this case, with the VLAN information. And this is what you would do to basically set up the Open vSwitch as I did before, but through a blueprint, well, not a blueprint, but through a service. Because then you would then simply say, configure it, and that's what you had to do. The only thing, quite straightforward. Now this one is quite interesting. The next one is a one for the zero tier. Remember, why would you need to do that? The zero tier service is the one that is used by my gateway service that I will be creating in a moment, because the private LAC, let's say, of the gateway will be a zero tier network. And I want the gateway service to also automatically accept joiner requests from machines on that network. Or joiner requests, by the way, already from the gateway. The gateway itself, when you have the gateway service creating the actual gateway, yeah, you want also that the gateway service will not only attach the gateway into the zero tier network and do a joiner request, but also authorize the joiner request. And that's where the zero tier service then comes into play. So how does it work? You simply create, I'm not going to do it, well, I'm going to do that, yeah. I'm reusing the zero tier token that I had before. So I have it here in a configuration. I give it a name, like this, like before, and I spin off, like before, like I did for the node service, I spin off a zero tier service. And as a result, again, if I do zrobot, zrobot services names, you'll see now that I have a new service, the myZT service, that is then responsible for, let's call it the life cycle, the full life cycle of the zero-tier network, or the zero-tier account, I should say, that I use in this environment. Yeah, good. Now, actually, I have to do this because currently the baby templates are still baby templates. What I mean, they still need to become more sophisticated. And one of the things you cannot do with the zero-tier client, or maybe I should check, I just realized, if we check here the templates. So I was talking about the zero-tier client, okay? Okay, that's what I wanted to know. What it doesn't do, if you go check it, the zero-tier client, and you check indeed the implementation, there is not much what that thing can do. It can only delete a network, and that's it. There's nothing. What this zero-tier service cannot do, for instance, is, for instance, create a new network. Or and remember, the setup of my demo that I have in mind is about creating a second zero-tier network. Yeah, that will then be the zero-tier network that is the private LAC of the gateway, instead of a VXLAN. Now, because the service cannot do that for me, and the gateway cannot do that for me, I need to, so it's not that sophisticated yet. That's certainly something we will be adding in the next week, most probably. I need to do that myself. And that's what I show you here in this piece of code. And I did it already before. I'm again using the zero-tier client that I already used before for creating my admin network. And I'm creating basically a new network. And actually, I'm not going to do that again. The result is that you see here in networks, if you go to networks, that I have what I call an app network, and that app network is there. It's simply there. And as you can see, I created there. I already have something attached to it. And that's actually what we will do now. So the network is there. So let me make sure that I have the correct, this is the 72. Let me check. Okay, this is this one. Just make sure that this value is known. Why do I need it? Let me explain. The next step is that we will actually create now the gateway. Well, actually we will create the gateway service. And then we will ask the gateway service to create the gateway. Now, what we provide here, I keep it very simple. We provide just two things. We provide the private LAC and the public LAC, remember, and the private LAC. Now, the public LAC, remember, I'm using the default network type. In my previous demo, I used VLAN, yeah, because it was an Open vCloud environment and it was the only way to get to the internet. I need to go through the VLAN that Open vCloud was using. In this case, I just used the public IP address that was assigned by Packet.net, and I do that simply by saying use the default network. It's as simple as that. Yeah. The other thing is the private LAC. In this case, I need to pass typically the type. In my previous demo, I used VXLAN. I'm not using VXLAN. I'm using zero-tier. Yeah. Then I need to specify an ID. In the previous demo, I specified 100, remember, because that was the value I passed as the value of the VXLAN. Here, there is no VXLAN, and you need to specify the 0IT ID. And that's the ID that I pass here from the network that I just created. Clearly, in the next iteration of a more sophisticated version of this gateway service, you will be able to pass whatever name you want, or even no name, and automatically the gateway would talk to the zero-tier client and create this thing that I had to do, well, manually through code. Yeah? In this case, so I do it like this. Furthermore, of course, I need still to pass the zero-tier client. What do I pass here? Is not the client, it's a bit of a strange name, but I pass here the name of the other service, or the name of the zero-tier service. That's important, because in that way, the gateway service knows to which other service to talk to authorize the join request of the gateway itself. Because the gateway service will launch the gateway, and the gateway will then join the zero-tier network that was specified, yeah? And then we still need somebody to authorize the join request. And that will be done by the gateway service, who will talk for getting that done to the zero-tier service. Okay, a lot of blah blah. Sorry for that, but I think that's a good explanation. So that's what I do. That's the configuration. And the only thing you need to do then, 2 steps again, you create the service, the gateway service, like this. Okay? And actually, at this point, it's not doing nothing. Eh? The service exists. And now we are going to have it do something. In this case, I'm going to say to the service, install, meaning I could check the code. The install code will actually install the gateway. Will actually call the code that we showed you the last time in the demo. And just for your purpose, I'm going to the templates. It's interesting to see, because that's where we all learn about how you will work with the SALs. Eh? It's much better code than the code I showed you. This is the code that is written by the people closer to the product than I am. So here you see, if you check the install code, how it's done. I'm surprised that so not so much, but here you see how they do it. And you see here they use the gateway SAL, which is probably here, to then deploy, and deploy code. I never checked it. I'm checking it myself for the first time, but the deploy code will be somewhere here too. Huh? Good. So I invite you to learn it from the experts here if you really want to know how things work. Now let's do it. Huh? Now let's have it do. And what is happening now is that it's in creating the gateway, it is doing a join request in the private network. So if you go in the private zero tier and do a refresh, you'll see it happened already. Really, here you see it. It's actually happening. See, this one is actually the gateway. It's online and it got an IP address. This IP address is actually, if you go to my slides, is actually, I should put it here, is actually this address here. The address at this point here, the zero tier address 1. This is the value. This is the value that got assigned to the gateway in the zero tier network. See? And okay, I'm stopping here because I didn't try it, but next steps would then be to spin off a ZDB. Well, this is not, you don't need to, but you need to create a VM. And that's, well, I'm not going to do all these steps. Allow me to do that in the next session and provide the demo steps for that. But that's actually all simple. Eh? That's actually the exact same things that you would be doing, but then for ZeroDB, for virtual disk, and so on. In the script, the only thing that I still did, but I didn't try it. And by the way, I'm not going to talk about it. In the script, I also included all the steps you need to do if you would do it manually, without the Zero Robot, without using the templates. If you would want to set up the exact same thing as I just did, you would do it like this. And that's actually to the point where we are now. Deploying the gateway, all these steps is actually what the robot does for us. Huh? And the only thing that I still prepared with time I had is create a virtual disk. Well, let's try it. Eh? We define a virtual disk. Yeah. We spin off the service representing that virtual disk. Okay, and there is an error. See, I didn't try that. Don't know why. Don't bother. I'll figure it out. But see, sometimes I'm a tester. Eh? And and that's what I do. Okay, voila. Thank you very much for sticking with me, Christophe and Christophe, or Chris and Christophe, because I don't have anything to learn you, I think. Eh? But I'm happy you were in my session, because then you'll be able to give me excellent feedback on how I can make this session better, the next iteration. So voila, I stopped talking. So Do you have questions or feedback? And maybe the fourth person can reveal himself at last. Dan, you're there too. How nice. You joined the call. In your car. How cool is that? Did you see it? He's driving at the left side. I was thinking he's not driving. No, he's driving the left side, of course. Or the right side. The right side. Good. Do you have questions? Dan, maybe you have questions?
Let me just can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Ah, good. Yeah, basically, I've just been listening to you on audio. No particular questions. Just to say, I really enjoyed that. I mean, just to record for me, I said this to you personally yesterday. The fact that you're debugging and working it out, and such a good sort of way of thinking through the process for me is so helpful. So just thank you very much. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoy listening to these. That's why I tuned in, even though I was driving. It's got me through a very boring car journey.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I love you too, Dan, you know. Eh?
Yeah. It's a good loving. I love Christoph too. He answered lots of crazy questions from me and my brother.
Yeah. I need to wear my t-shirt with love imprinted on it. Because
I think so.
We are all about love, isn't it?
I think absolutely true.
Okay, good. No,
Thank you very much.
I'll stop recording.
Super job.
Or if Chris or Christoph still wants to say something to share in the session, in the recording, they can. I give you 1, 2, 3. You want to say something?
No, it's okay. No, go ahead.
Okay, then I'll stop recording and stop sharing the screen. And